Hello and welcome from ITU Telecom World here in Geneva in Switzerland. And I'm talking with Malcolm Johnson, who is the Director of the Telecommunication Standardization Bureau. Malcolm, good to see you again.
Nice to see you, Martin.
We meet in this villa every now and again to talk about things. Let's begin at the beginning. You're doing a piece in the forum, a speech in the forum session, which is about smarter lives and so on. Do you actually believe that smarter technologies can really improve our individual lives?
Certainly do. I think if you look at what smart technologies can offer to improve one's life, it's very evident. Take smart grids, for example. Smart grids will greatly improve the efficiency of electricity distribution. Smart buildings will make buildings more economically viable, more energy efficient, and reduce waste. And then we have the cloud computing, which will offer the possibility for developing countries to leap several generations of technology and access the very latest information technology. Then we have smart water management. I mean, the shortage of water is becoming critical in many parts of the world. Smart technology can help to reduce the tremendous waste of water that is occurring. Cars, smart cars. You know, we move to electric cars, will reduce pollution, reduce energy needs, and also a number of technologies in cars can reduce the potential for accidents, so reduce the death rates on the roads. So there are several areas where, you know, smart technologies is going to make a significant difference to people's lives. Doesn't matter whether they're living in urban areas in developed countries or rural areas in the developing world.
Okay, you've listed areas here that can be affected by ICT to help us all live smarter, better lives. What's the ITU doing in concrete terms to help enable this to happen?
Well, the ITU produces international standards. They're developed by the world community, for the world community. 193 countries, members of the ITU, and over 700 private sector entities are members of the ITU. So ITU is in the business of producing international standards that are interoperable and are non-discriminatory. So what does that mean? That means that users in any country can make use of that product and service if they travel anywhere in the world. It means that startup companies in developing countries can produce products or services to those standards and enter into a global market. And it means that through the economies of scale of products built for world market, that the cost of these products and services will reduce and become more affordable. So we are developing around 200 to 300 new standards every year. And these are addressing many of the areas I mentioned. We have a group on smart grids. We have a group looking at cloud computing. We're also starting work on standards for telemedicine so that the benefits of healthcare can be brought to people living in remote areas. And we're also developing standards in the area of e-education and e-government so that young people living anywhere in the world can have access to the information, access to learning programs, and really put everyone on an even footing for making the most of their lives in the future.
How do you bring the developing countries, developing nations into the standardization process when they haven't been in it before?
This is one of our main objectives. We call it bridging the standards gap. And we're we feel it's very important that they do participate so that their specific requirements are taken into account in the development of the standards. But also that it's only through involvement in the development of the standards that you really get to understand the standard and are able to implement the standard. So it's very important that they do participate, and we are facilitating that participation in a number of ways. We provide for remote participation in the meetings now so that they can participate from their own country. They don't have to go to the expense of traveling to Geneva or wherever that meeting happens to be. And it's not just passively following the meeting, they can actively follow the meeting, they can make proposals remotely. So we're doing that. We're also trying to have far more meetings in the regions, so that we have different groups meeting in different parts of the world sequentially, so give everyone an equal chance of physically participating in the meetings. And we also offer fellowships to the least developing countries to pay for the airfare and accommodation for one of their delegates to attend. So we're seeing, very pleased to say, a great increase in participation from the developing countries in our standards work. In fact, last year was the first year ever where the number of delegates from developing countries exceeded the number of delegates from developed countries. So in fact, every meeting now we see 5, 6, maybe 10 new countries participating for the first time.
I note you're opening up membership to academia, which brings another branch into the standardization process. Why did you feel it necessary to do that? Was something missing before, or is this just broadening the scope even further?
This is something that I've been very interested in for some years. I was very pleased that last year's Plenipotentiary Conference agreed to offer this possibility for academia to join our work at a very low fee, just $2,000 for academia in developing countries and $4,000 for universities in developed countries. So it's a very substantial reduction on the normal fee. It's very important, especially for the work on development of standards, because you need to look into the future. And all innovation traditionally has come from academia. So we need them working with us to help us look at what standards are going to be required in the future, because these standards take time to develop naturally. And our private sector members, they tend to have more shorter term needs than the academia. So having them join us is very beneficial for us. It's beneficial for them as well, because they can network with all the major companies from around the world and really take part in the development of new innovative standards.
You mentioned it takes time for standards to be agreed and ratified and actually implemented. Given the fact that we're looking to smarter cities, smarter lives for much of the world's population as that possibly can be included in this, what do you see for the future as far as the ITU and standardization is concerned, and how that will ripple out across the globe?
Well, one thing that's very important to keep in mind when we're developing the new technology, the new standards, is that it should be there to serve us, not to run our lives, but to make our lives better and to serve our own needs. So this is something that we have to keep in mind, that we have to look at the technology that will meet our needs, meet the needs of people in their own real world. And that real world will vary considerably, depending if they're living in a remote area in a developing country or if they're in an urban area in a developed country. So this is what we call human-centric ICTs. We have to sense the needs of the people that we're providing this technology for. We have to measure and sense and analyze the environment in which they're in at any point in time. And the technology is coming that will allow that. We'll have thousands of millions of sensors to sense exactly the environment that any individual is in, so that we can tailor the technology to meet the specific needs of the individual. And this is a real paradigm shift in what we've been doing up to now. And I believe that the work we're doing in ITU will lead to that situation where the technology is really there to serve the individual, regardless of where that person is, what time of day it is, and in what sort of environment they are in. And ITU is here to lead us to that eventuality.
Malcolm Johnson, thank you very much indeed.
It's a pleasure.